Introspection is perhaps the most painful surgery to perform. The trumpets of daily affairs and the lords of St Lucian law are two of the most algrophobic breed of patients. Their lack of professionalism puts people's lives and freedom at risk. Who will be brave enough to not only switch the channel and turn off the radio, but burn the newspapers as a form of protest? Are those we depend on so jaundiced and prejudiced that the truth evades our collective society? Well, can I help you? What makes you mad? Are they the hot-button issues we ignore, the newspin which passes as newsmakers, and the useless talk we keep in touch with? Introspection, though painful, is necessary by the fourth estate.
The beauty of a democracy is such that there are always separation of powers. So you have the judiciary, you have the executive, you have the legislature, and of course, a lot of people like to believe or think around the world in any democracy you have the fourth estate, and that is the media.
A phenomenon is developing in our local media context where political agents posing as media practitioners are using the airwaves as a vehicle to drive their partisan political messages and interests.
It's an incompetent media. It's a media that does not do any research whatsoever and consequently does not serve the purpose to the public for which it exists.
Report what we say, because if you are going to doctor what we say and put it in a manner for people to generalize, then you are doing political mischief.
The mass media constitutes the backbone of democracy. The media supplies information on which voters base their political decisions. The media also has the responsibility to identify social issues plaguing society and, when necessary, serve as a medium for deliberation between communities and institutionalized bodies. They are also the watchdogs of the society, uncovering errors and wrongdoings by those who are entrusted with the power to govern.
It looks like this is the season of the miniatures.
It is therefore reasonable to insist that the media be held to certain standards in keeping with their professional responsibilities. The media's most important democratic function, to which they are held accountable, includes the surveillance of socio-political developments through the identification of the most relevant issues to the community that they serve, providing a platform for debate across a diverse range of views, holding officials accountable for the abuse of power through effective pressure on various mediums, providing a framework for the citizens to learn, choose, and become involved in the political process, and especially important, to resist efforts of the forces outside of the media attempting to subvert its independence. However, there is a growing concern that the mass media is not adequately fulfilling its mandate. Media critics claim that commercial mass media, controlled by a few multinational conglomerates, has become an anti-democratic force supporting the status quo. The news has become more entertaining than it is informing, supplying mostly gossip, scandal, sex, and violence.
You know how many times I, as a parliamentarian, try to discuss issues in this country and I don't see it discussed in the press of this country? We only discuss the issues the press wants to discuss. And therefore they tell you these fellas like Robert Louis, they're not sexy enough because the discussion is not about Mapui.
Political news is more about personalities than about the ideologies. In the absence of serious debate, voters are left with paid political propaganda containing only meaningless slogans, making them disinterested and cynical about politics.
Deban! Deban! Deban!
Rochamel, Cos overrun, your tutor Sam, I would have loved Mr. Frederick to read the letter which revoked his visa, but he did not do that.
It is also claimed that the watchdogs are barking at the wrong things. The media hunts for scandal in the private lives of politicians and their families, but ignore the serious consequences of their policies, like sharks in a feeding frenzy. All too often, the media makes us fear the wrong things. Minor dangers are hysterically blown out of proportion, while much more serious menaces are left largely unnoticed. The exaggerated fears often lead to unnecessary measures and legislation and gonzo justice. Critics also complain that the media fails to report wrongdoings in its own industry. Mass media freedom is one of the major guarantees of general freedom of speech within any society, which is an essential element for ensuring other civil rights and liberties. The freedom of the press represents the ability to discuss without restriction and to criticize the activities of both the authorities of civil and private structures within the confines of the law and adhering to journalistic professional standards. Journalists contribute to the realization of the right to express unpopular opinions or agree with a point of view expressed by the majority. The journalist must defend freedom of speech, retain independence of his or her political views and convictions as he or she attempts to provide informed decisions. He or she must resist any efforts to distort information or introduce censorship of facts. Like any other citizen, the journalist has a right to political and other convictions. However, in his or her professional activities, these should remain neutral and objective. But does this balanced scale actually exist in Fair Helen? Do political pundits and press secretaries use their favorite Crayola marker over certain journalists? Furthermore, does the leader of government business even entertain journalists who attempt to bring the truth to light?
When you say other roads, what do you mean?
For example, you're a newsman. Newsmen are not allowed to ask questions. I'm not in an interview. Yes, you can ask me, but not
I beg to differ. I hope that Mr. Lewis would tell you that I am a member of this community.
Yeah, you have a camera.
So I have no camera. Okay, I am officially I'm taking on my camera and I'm asking you the question.
Respecting the right of society to obtain objective information, the journalist must convey truthful information and a whole spectrum of opinions on certain issues. The news should be based on facts and information. It must represent the truth at all times, must be obtained from a myriad of sources, and must be complete and unbiased. It is especially important that information that can be deemed to offend or humiliate a person be checked thoroughly before embarking on exposure. The journalist should not be a spokesperson for a self-serving group's interests. He or she should contribute to mass media's objective coverage of the pluralism of opinions and is not allowed to hide publicly important information or distort the facts in an effort to accommodate a minority faction. Headlines and subheadlines of newspaper articles should correspond fully to the contents of the article. Unconfirmed information, rumors and speculation should be marked as such. The victim of violent incidents should be treated with greater regard and respect, as should be the case with witnesses and victims' families. Special attention should be paid to selecting appropriate photographs illustrating the details of an accident, which may provide a visual component to the story told without sensationalizing otherwise serious issues and catastrophes, as well as the victims who fall prey to such. An awareness and humanity should be applied to sensitive issues as these relate to victims and their families, so that information is not disclosed before family can be notified or information can be verified. Mass media should not stimulate unhealthy interest in the details of a crime. It is necessary to carefully consider which of the two is priority: interest of the society in getting accurate information, or interest only in who the victims or people concerned may be. The burning question is, are these basic and fundamental rules respected in St. Lucia?
So they're a joke? Huh? But we could kill the police too, and the police don't have guns. We have guns too. We have guns too. If it's war, it's war.
Sometimes I find we take material that is given, interviews that are conducted, and just reproduce without any corroboration, without finding other sides to the story and presenting a balanced view of what has transpired. You know, so in our rush to be first, sometimes there is carelessness.
The threats that were made and carried by your station were not inflammatory. They were illegal, they are criminal, because a threat made against any person and carried electronically, that evidence is admissible.
The Press Freedom Index is an annual ranking of countries compiled and published by Reporters Without Borders based upon a country's press freedom record in the previous year. Out of 200 countries, St. Lucia ranked 12th in the world, number 1 in the Americas, number 1 in the Caribbean, and ranked higher than any other country in Africa. St. Lucia has come a long way. Its first newspaper, the Independent Press of 1843, relayed news to the plantation owners of all the happenings back on number 10 Downing Street. There was hardly ever news of what happened in the villages where the newspapers were printed. The Voice newspaper, established in 1885 for many years, was white paper, white ink, and white writers. The evolutionary process saw the St. Lucia Guardian in 1901, the St. Lucia Herald from 1911, the Crusader from 1934, the Vanguard from 1973, and the Star, 1975, all brought the truth to light. There are 5 newspapers in St. Lucia, 19 radio stations, and 11 television stations. Crime stories dominate most newscasts, and as such, these stories can place journalists and the judiciary on a collision path.
You literally have to look over your shoulder, and especially in an environment where people are so litigious, and also where people are in an environment where they understand and they know their rights.
I think we are very lax here. I think the rush for scoops at the people who are involved in journalism don't read. They are not educated, and I use the word to mean they don't know their journalism, they don't know precedents, they're not interested in the law. They're just right, it's a scoop. You get a guy to say so-and-so, wow, this is a great thing. But depending on when that is said and when that is carried, you could find yourself in legal trouble.
You do not report a story going in and saying, oh, I have to think about the court, I have to think about the market vendors, I have to think about the jury. No. Our responsibility as journalists is when we get there to get the information and to report it as honestly as we possibly can. Yes, later on people may say it's irresponsible, but it is not later on. It is not after the fact. It is what is happening right now when I appear on the scene.
I'm of the view that the media is largely irresponsible. I don't mean that as a criticism, but rather as an observation. To whom are we responsible as media people? And I'm one of them, I recognize that. I'm responsible to my bank manager, to my shareholders. I'm not responsible to the general public. I'm only catering to, perhaps one might say, the lower tastes of the general public so that I may keep my bank manager and my shareholders happy. A politician, on the other hand, is responsible. He is responsible to his constituency. I have, as a media person, no constituency. Therefore, the constraints upon what I write and what I say have to be elsewhere. And that is where the law comes in. The law of defamation, the law of contempt.
When we return, a cutlass and a journalist clash.
Every once in a while, a company will appear on the scene with a fresh perspective, a burst of adrenaline, and a passion for excellence. Its humble beginnings are steeped in social transformation. Last to enter the arena, it changes the status quo, and the game will never be the same again. The independent film company appeared on the scene when the commercial sector needed it most. Its metamorphosis blossomed with the production of the most creative television commercials in St Lucia, and they do it all absolutely free. From marketing concepts, surveys and research, to professionally produced ads for social media and television, and the most engaging documentaries in the English-speaking Caribbean. With heavy investments in technology and a focus on building the technical and service capacity of its nimble team, it prides itself on being the little company that could. The Independent Film Company Incorporated, changing yesterday's game, rewriting today's roles, and charting the way for multimedia production here, now, and beyond. Where most people see a window, we see a vision. We see the hours of development and testing, from the precision of craftsmen, quality of components, CNC processing to form immaculate all-glass products, the dedication of people who stand behind a product built to last a lifetime. And who knows, maybe after today, every time you look through one, you'll remember everything that went into it. St. Lu means windows, doors and all-glass products, and customization of modular products to suit your needs. Precision, quality, safety. They're your windows and your world. Call us today at 454-6538.
I watched him on the bed, knowing a man who has worked his entire life can't afford the cost of his surgery or medication. Mom and I must sell barbecue tickets to help save his life. For less than $4 a day, the cost of a packet of gum, my dad could have been airlifted to get treatment. Some adults can be so insensitive with their lack of foresight. Now, Mom and I either have to watch him wither away or sell a whole lot more barbecue. Why? Because one person didn't care enough to plan.
GTM Medical Insurance. Less than $4 a day for the greatest peace of mind anyone could ask for. Call us today, 458-6300.
Loving you is easy 'cause you're beautiful. And everything that I do,
Behind these walls are hundreds of men, each with a story to tell. Many have relayed fascinating tales of love, hate, jealousy, revenge, stupidity, lucidity. And then there are those claiming innocence. This man needed no introduction. I had seen his story on YouTube as relayed by a local newscast about 5 years ago.
The reason why that I am here in Bodley, you broadcast.
It wasn't me.
Oh, by whose authority?
It wasn't me. I saw it on television, like.
Oh, so
hundreds
therefore,
of other people, thousands of other people.
It's not your station. It's not your.
No.
Anyway, okay.
I don't go for a station.
Okay.
Yes, I watched from the time your crime happened. I watched it on television, and I was appalled.
The body of 34-year-old Gilbert Isaac was discovered in a wooded area Monday afternoon. It is reported that the Balcar resident was involved in an altercation with an individual when he was chopped several times with a cutlass. The individual who committed the alleged act spoke to HTS News.
Moi dis qu'on il supposé marcher côte là mon besoin côte là mon fait travail moi il joue maman il dit mon vieux côte là m'a balé joue maman so les jouer maman moi jouer maman il dévie il dit moi jouer maman il paye pour côte là hacher moi dis sous dossier non pour côte là hacher moi côte là depuis pied derrière moi so il prend un morceau qui fait sur les épaules moi les fait sur les épaules moi il marque là les fesses morceau côte là les épaules moi pousser morceau côte là avec moi haler côte là derrière moi et moi chop les bokoy là moi chop les bokoy moi style ka venir devant moi commencer doler tout partout pays là moi peut te tout à pays des niveaux là moi les volants là moi maté moi regarder moi j'aime ka pisser ça et il m'a demandé pardon moi dit qu'on pardon pour qui ça ka venir m'a demandé pardon travail pour venir travailler pas ka venir travailler l'argent moi n'approche moi c'est lui qui venir violer ou pas jamais ka passer ici ou ça moi la ka c'est ça ou venir faire et là moi fin moi prochain mon parti moi faire report moi dis acheter police pour venir m'asseoir avec ça vous voulez faire moi faire c'est la vérité moi me parler ça c'est tout.
I plead not guilty because I know I defend myself. I did not look for trouble. The Lord never look at it like that. The Lord take me for a liar.
Were you instrumental in his death?
But as I told you, we were fighting, I defend myself.
Why did you plead not guilty to causing his death?
The reason why I plead not guilty, it is because when I see the post-mortem, the statement that I made with what I did, I see an additional, and my lawyer tell me they will find me guilty for murder. There is nobody to be held responsible. After 3 years, for me to see that post-mortem and see another man could have been involved. So therefore, what can I do? It is too late. He demanded that I plead guilty because they would have found me guilty and give me maximum jail. Jail is not pleasant.
How many years were you sentenced to?
I have stayed in board like him there 2010. And I am going 2014. I only remain something like 4 days here.
4 days there?
Yeah, that's what I remain.
My man, we need to have a drink, bro. Tell me your name again.
Joseph Pierre.
Joseph Pierre. You're taking my interview somewhere I was not prepared to go. But since you're here, let's dance.
Yeah, we will.
Some would say that you're paying for your big mouth. What would you say?
If somebody is saying that I'm paying for my big mouth,
what would you say?
What I would say, to God be the glory, because I haven't lied.
Amen.
I haven't lied.
And if you had to look to speak directly to the people who broadcast your confession, what would you say?
What I would have said to them, I believe they know the result of people who sell people out. They should know the result. It is unwise for them to broadcast me, a girl staying in England, calling my sister in Matnik, before anybody from St Lucia call my sister in Matnik and tell them about the case. My name and my face is scattered throughout the earthly surface. as a murderer.
Because of your words. Nobody put a gun to your head to tell you, say it. You said it on your own volition. You opened your big mouth to say it.
Number one, what you're saying, it appears truth, but there is more to that. If I was prepared for such a calamity, I would have known how to deal with it. I am a law-abiding citizen. I seek not to make no offense. For my 54 years, this calamity occurs unaware.
La mo chop li boko yi, mo still ka fini lufa. Mo commencé doler tout bateau à pied. La mo bete bo do bateau à pied. De ni volant la mo maté. Mo garder moi j'aime li ka pisser ça. Et il m'a demandé pardon. Mo dit ko pardon pour qui ça ka fin m'a demandé pardon. Travail pour fin travail pas ka fin travail. L'argent mo n'a pas pensé le ka finir violer.
I think it's a classic example of what should never ever happen. The alleged perpetrator of that particular incident is basically giving his side of the story to a reporter. That kind of evidence he should be presenting in court so that the court can dispassionately rule on this particular case. Also, the jury pool has been tainted. People are watching this on television, and they will either have sympathy for the alleged perpetrator or the attacker. And the jury pool will be coming from the society, and they would have already, without even paying attention to the evidence before them, the circumstances, the frame of mind of the attacker or the victim, they would have already made up their mind on this particular issue. And I think that is a classic example of clearly what should never happen.
A lot of times the media depends on eyewitness to give body and to give substance to the news that they're reporting. And although it sort of traverses the law in some instances, I do believe the story was well done.
It's not something that is uncommon for alleged perpetrators of acts, whether criminal or otherwise, ask questions about their actions, about their innocence or guilt, about the contributing factors or mitigating circumstances. So I did not have a particular problem with it.
I think that was reckless. Absolutely reckless to broadcast that, in my view. I remember some time ago, there was a guy who allegedly raped a woman up north, and the police arrested him, a gardener, and he was shackled to a bed. He'd been hurt for whatever reason. Shackled to a bed at Victoria Hospital, and HCS went and interviewed him and carried it on the basis, well, he confessed, but that's not how it works. A news program is not, you know, right away you're putting yourself in a position denying the guy his rights. If a reporter just goes and gets a guy who's dumb enough or drunk enough or drugged out enough to make a statement that amounts to a confession, I wouldn't be surprised if his lawyer, that guy's lawyer, could have that case overturned.
What I will express now is not the view of an ex-judge, nor even the view of a lawyer, and certainly not the view of the media. As an individual, I would say that it is responsible reporting, providing information on what clearly was a matter of public interest.
When we return, does the media contaminate the jury pool? And can the DPP place a gag order?
The DPP has absolutely no authority to gag anyone.
Loving you is easy 'cause you're beautiful. And everything that I do
Hey, stop it.
That's what I'm here for.
For over 138 years, we've had your back. From home contents to medical, auto to business continuity. GTM Insurance. Sound, solid, and reliable. Every once in a while, a company will appear on the scene with a fresh perspective, a burst of adrenaline, and a passion for excellence. Its humble beginnings are steeped in social transformation. Last to enter the arena, it changes the status quo, and the game will never be the same again. The independent film company appeared on the scene when the commercial sector needed it most. Its metamorphosis blossomed with the production of the most creative television commercials in St Lucia, and they do it all absolutely free. From marketing concepts, surveys and research, to professionally produced ads for social media and television, and the most engaging documentaries in the English-speaking Caribbean. With heavy investments in technology and a focus on building the technical and service capacity of its nimble team, it prides itself on being the little company that could. The Independent Film Company Incorporated, changing yesterday's game, rewriting today's roles, and charting the way for multimedia production here, now, and beyond. Where most people see a window, we see a vision. We see the hours of development and testing, from the precision of craftsmen, quality of components, CNC processing to form immaculate all-glass products, the dedication of people who stand behind a product built to last a lifetime. And who knows, maybe after today, every time you look through one, you'll remember everything that went into it. St. Lou means windows, doors and all-glass products, and customization of modular products to suit your needs. Precision, quality, safety. They're your windows and your world. Call us today at 454-6538.
One of the hallmarks of a civilized political system is respect for the right to a fair trial. In St. Lucia, the right to a trial by jury in criminal cases is enshrined in the Constitution. If defendants are to receive an impartial trial, assessments of their guilt or innocence should be decided in the confines of a controlled courtroom by an unprejudiced jury, uncontaminated by the frenzy of a sensationalistic press barrage. Although our system of criminal justice has many significant deficiencies, the overwhelming majority of criminal defendants who go to trial are tried by a jury that has not been contaminated by pre-trial publicity. Their stories are not sufficiently newsworthy to garner press attention. But some defendants are not so lucky. In their circumstances, the press is eager to publish all the evidence they can find without regard to the effects on prospective jurors.
The white Bronco is spotted.
Few things in television has been as entertaining as the low-speed chase of a white Ford Bronco across the freeways of Los Angeles on June 17, 1994. 2 people were dead. A third was allegedly threatening to kill himself, and millions across the United States and around the world tuned in to watch the spectacle. Since that day, the O.J. Simpson murder case has received more newspaper and television coverage than any other crime in recent history. Was this much coverage deemed jury contamination? St Lucia, June 10, 1971. Marjorie and James Etherington, the general manager of Geese Industries St Lucia, were found dead in their Mont residence, which was gutted by fire. Jean-Baptiste Fauché, Stevenson Florius, and Anthony Charles were arrested and charged. The Voice of St. Lucia relayed all the gory details, the possible motives, the conspiracy theories, and the ball-by-ball reporting of all the happenings from the courtroom. Was this much coverage deemed jury contamination? Gabu, Wada, Brian, Cassian, and the rest of the gang were common stars on the front page. Inside was methodical testimony of the court trial and process. Was this prejudicial?
Donovan Lord skipped town after a forensic audit by the tourist board uncovered something was amiss with the marketing agency's balance sheet. According to officials, the former financial controller allegedly embezzled over $330,000 between the 2nd of June and the 29th of September 2008. In July, he was charged with 5 counts of stealing by reason of employment, but managed to elude capture. Lord was apprehended by the Counter-Drug Crime Task Force and Organized Crime Narcotics and Firearms Bureau in Trinidad and Tobago.
On his return, Donovan Lord appeared before Magistrate Bellon John, a man with great legal perspicacity. Astonishingly, this magistrate allowed news cameras in his court to film just this case out of hundreds which he presides over. Was this much coverage deemed jury contamination? And did it violate the fundamental principles of contempt of court? Today, the Latin word sub judice, meaning under judicial consideration and therefore prohibited from public discussion, is the tool used to silence, albeit caution the media in an effort to thwart jury contamination.
The media is not merely an organ that reports news. It is very much an organ, and I use the term organ to encompass the whole of media. It is very much an organ that influences people, so that in influencing people, it needs to be responsible so as not to contaminate the process of adjudication in courts.
If a matter is before the courts, you have all the right to discuss it unless there are specific directives from the court not to discuss aspects of that matter.
Whoever, pending any proceedings in any court, publishes, in writing or otherwise, anything concerning such proceedings or any party thereto, and this is important, with intent to excite any popular prejudice for or against any party to such proceedings, is liable indictably to imprisonment for 2 years. The new law actually doesn't speak about exciting prejudice, but rather who publishes with the intent to influence an outcome.
Because moi ça tous les jours c'est droit pour couiller pour défendre gouvernement, okay?
Even though a matter is before the court, there is need for you to discuss it, because one of the things that a court must appreciate is that people must have the confidence in the judiciary. You must have confidence that not justice will only be seen to be done, but it will be done. And you want people as well to believe in the justice system. And if you are quick to say that this matter is before the courts, it's sub judice, and therefore you cannot discuss it, I think what you're doing is instilling that kind of fear into not only reporters, journalists, talk show hosts, etc., but also in members of the public, which should see the court as not the enemy, but as their friend?
Of course it has to, and it has to, because the media allows for a certain level of analysis and provides the opportunity for what we call public opinion. It may not be trial in the legal sense, but people do come to an opinion when the information is presented to them. And people can go one way or the other in terms of determining whether somebody is right or wrong. And this is a direct, how would I say, outcome of how the media operates.
Judges, magistrates, they have jurisdiction over their courts. So whatever transpires within the walls of their court, they have power over. Whatever happens outside their court, they don't have power over. So to think that, the excuse that many people give, that a matter is sub judice, and a lot of people use sub judice as a cop-out, and therefore it cannot be discussed, is hogwash.
Victoria Charles Clark wants people to watch what they say as it pertains to the Lambert's Academy case. The matter has been widely publicized, with Lambert's headlines sprawled in newspapers and on TV screens across the Caribbean. In this case, the Director of Public Prosecution says it really comes down to what is said and reported.
We must not give the impression that the court is our enemy or the judicial system is something that we should be afraid of. And I think inadvertently, that's the impression that is being conveyed on the part of legal officers, the DPP included, when we are told not to speak about a particular matter.
Some caution has to be exercised on what is discussed in the public arena and on the media as it relates to those cases which are currently before the court.
It's right in the circumstances, because as I said earlier, our journalists don't seem to have a clue about the law, about court procedure, about things like sub judice and contempt of court and so on, or prejudicing a jury pool. It seemed not to think of that. So it is almost condescending, really, that the DPP would have cause to lecture journalists. The DPP is interested in her case, because if something prejudices the jury pool, that may cost the DPP the prosecution's case. So she has every right to warn journalists, knowing the kind of journalists we have here.
There is a thin line between responsible journalism and contempt of court. Criminal proceedings are deemed active once a person is arrested, a warrant for arrest has been issued, a summons has been issued, or a person has been charged and remains active until conviction. Contempt of court law is concerned with the possibility that a juror, witness, or lay judge may be influenced by the material which is published about active legal proceedings. Accordingly, any of the following activities could be considered to be in contempt: obtaining or publishing details of jury deliberations, filming or recording within court buildings, making payments to witnesses, publishing information obtained from confidential court documents, reporting on the defendant's previous convictions, mounting an organized campaign to influence the proceedings, and anticipating the course of a trial or predicting the outcome.
It is extremely unlikely that a professional judicial officer, whether it be a magistrate or a judge, will be influenced by what is written in a newspaper. It is more likely that a juror or a potential juror reading what a newspaper writes will be influenced by that newspaper, given that the newspaper, of course, is not constrained by the rules of evidence. If a person is charged with a violent crime, and you publish again and again and again pictures of that person under arrest, unkempt, untidy, and you show him next to, for example, a convicted murderer, that would be influencing people. You know, influence can be very subtle. It doesn't have to be overt and in your face.
Who, what, why, where, and when. The famous 5 W's of journalism. What happens when the nightly news delivers more than the average viewer needs to be informed? What happens when the information broadcasted is prejudicial to someone's guilty or innocent plea? Who has a right to place a gag on the said media when a topic of national interest is debated over the airwaves? Intentionally or not, aspects of the matter will be discussed. When is enough information prejudicial information? The Eugene St Lucia matter was a classic case of the Queen versus the Fourth Estate.
I see absolutely nothing wrong with the media commenting, well, recording the fact that here is this person who has been on remand for, I think it was almost 10 years, commenting on the fact that the quality of any evidence which could be brought in his ultimate prosecution might well be corrupted by the passage of time and the failure of memory. I see nothing wrong with that, because it is outrageous and obscene that a man should be in custody for 10 years awaiting trial.
Director of Public Prosecutions Victoria Charles Clark on Thursday warned media organizations from discussing matters in the Eugene St Lucia case. In 2004, the Saltibus man was arrested and charged with the 2002 brutal rape and murder of his stepdaughter, Valinda Joseph. Clark also reminded the media of the 4 areas that could constitute contempt of court under Section 390 of the Criminal Code 2004. She further warned media houses could be held liable for any breaches of the criminal code if they published material deemed to have prejudiced the case.
The DPP cannot place a gag order on the media. The DPP has no such powers. If a gag order is to be placed, it has to come from the court.
The DPP has absolutely no authority to gag anybody. The DPP is a citizen in that regard, just like you and me, responsible under the law not to prejudice a trial. So in saying the media shouldn't publish anything about it, she is speaking loosely of what the law says.
Journalists can choose to ignore the DPP if they want to, or if they want to risk it and write whatever they want to write. I mean, the DPP is not stopping anybody from writing anything. It's just that there are consequences for both the DPP's case and the media house.
The hypocrisy of the justice system and the callous nature of some media balance out on Lady Justice's pendulum of convenience. The office of the DPP speaks when it suits its interests, while the media continues to run amok with stories which place people's lives and freedom in jeopardy at the want of a sexy headline. The issue of intent, which fuels Section 380 of the Criminal Code, is used even by the Registrar of the High Court to attack, intimidate, and censor the media using her office to pressure spineless media managers. During the production of the Untold Stories documentary, The Cathedral Massacre, 1 week before the program was scheduled to be aired, and 14 years after the accused had committed the crimes and had not been sentenced by a lone judge, the Registrar of the High Court dispatched a letter to all media houses not to air the said program. Again, threatening to invoke Section 380. A classic paradox of hypocrisy, misinformation, and toxic, convenient St. Lucian double standards.
I am not sure that there are any circumstances which gives the Registrar of the High Court the power to say a matter must not be published.
I can't say it on air. I can say what my take was on bull crap. Bunch of bull. And I read the provision that was attached to the letter, and there was no relation between what she had said and what was in the legal provisions. I think it was very high-handed. I think it was an abuse of power. I think it was an attempt at intimidation.
When we return, a beach picnic ends in murder and jail for Rick Wayne.
Life is a series of triumphs and trials. The circle of life has all the usual certainties and, of course, the unpredictable. Just one can affect you and your loved ones. Sadly, many fail to prepare for the unforeseen. Thankfully, we've been here for over 138 years, helping you plan and recover. We offer peace of mind at that critical moment. GTM Insurance. Sound, solid, and reliable. Call us today at 458-6300 or log on to gtminsurance.net. Where most people see a window, we see a vision. We see the hours of development and testing, from the precision of craftsmen, quality of components, CNC processing to form immaculate all-glass products, the dedication of people who stand behind a product built to last a lifetime. And who knows, maybe after today, every time you look through one, you'll remember everything that went into it. St. Lu means windows, doors, and all-glass products, and customization of modular products to suit your needs. Precision, quality, safety. They're your windows and your world. Call us today at 454-6538.
This is actually the owner of the company where we are. Top thing, I tell you, top thing.
Loving you is easy 'cause you're beautiful. And everything that I do, la 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 la. Do 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 do.
His name is Cuthbert Phillips. He is a former commissioner of police. He was unceremoniously given the boot in 1988 by then Prime Minister John Compton. The Carl Hudson report fingered Phillipsy as he was known as the R in Rotten of the Royal St Lucia Police Force. On Sunday, April 8, 1990, Phillipsy, along with his old pal Randall York, Deputy Director of Prisons, were chilling here at the Pigeon Point Beach when Phillipsy's son came to complain that a man named Nivian Hippolyte, aka Jocquis, had held a knife to his friend's throat. Cuthbert Phillips went into his vehicle, retrieved his .357 Magnum revolver, and shot Jocquis in the head. Phillipsy claimed it was an accidental shooting, but the ballistic expert Lionel Bell proved otherwise. Within seconds, star journalist Rick Wayne was on the scene, camera and pen in hand. The stories, which were subsequently splashed on the front page of the Star on April 14th and April 21st, would be the basis for legal precedents.
Oh, I'm probably the only one in St. Lucia, if not the Caribbean, typical, who was hauled before the court because I wrote something that was deemed contempt of court. The stories that followed up right immediately were all stories indicative of a self-defense plea. And there were people there who came to me, and this was all published, by the way. Some of that stuff was published in the Crusader, and but defensive of the alleged shooter. And I carried a story that quoted two witnesses to what had happened. For a start, that the guy who was shot was unarmed. And all of that, the contrary to that, was written in the Crusader. So you'd think that both papers, if any charge was going to be laid, both papers would be involved.
In fact, Cuthbert Phillips and Queen's Counsel Kenneth Moplesey demanded jail for Rick Wayne. Legal shenanigans were tried by both the Phillips and Wayne side, but after nearly a month, the judge made a surprising ruling.
The paper referring to the deceased states he had been shot in the head at point-blank range with a .357 Magnum, among the most powerful of handguns. The connotation is obvious. It is on the page 3 of the issue of the Star dated April 21st that one finds the most offensive publications. Certainly prejudicial to the applicant's fair trial, potential witnesses had given evidence to Rick Wayne, a person who is well aware that the police have already begun criminal proceedings. Special attention was focused on this line. Both Irene and Georgiana swear they never saw Hippolyte with a knife on that day. This statement leaves little doubt the issue is being tried in the press. The reporter seems to have administered the oath to Irene and Georgiana. In my judgment, the effect is to tell the public that Irene and Georgiana's story is the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Contempts are glaring and are calculated to prejudice the course of justice and the fair trial of the applicant. I find the Star guilty of contempt and impose a fine of $1,000.
Ironically, the Voice newspaper was also threatened with contempt for publishing articles which were pro-prosecution. Hypocritically, the Crusader newspaper, which relayed the same story yet posited the theory of a self-defense killing, was never cautioned. The vicious, albeit callous cycle of bringing the truth to light, though it may prejudice a fair trial and contaminate the jury pool, is the norm in St Lucia. Every television station is guilty of worse than what Rick Wayne reported. The story of Joseph Pear, the farmer from Saltibus who had a mic shoved in his face, a confession extracted and broadcast for the elucidation of the general public, was contemptuous in nature and no doubt prejudicial to the accused. The lords of law and jurisprudence, along with journalists, sat idly by while this man's rights were violated. When high-profile legal issues arise, the traditional media must attempt a familiar balancing act, weighing ethical obligations of fairness, accuracy, and objectivity against the necessity for timely and competitive reporting. This mission in itself requires careful execution. But there is significantly more pressure in recent years due to a voracious 24-hour news cycle, competition by new media entities that have high-tech speed and, occasionally, choose to remain unfettered by journalistic ethics and challenging economic realities. Time, a landmark court case, and greater awareness will determine whether we are frozen in a gonzo era of journalism or whether we are held to a much higher standard.
Could go on and on, the fool has never been told. Could go on and on, the fool has never been told. Could go on and on, the fool has never been